What's up guys, my name's Tom and welcome back to the FPL Centre. Game week 12 is in the books and we've had to endure yet another international break, so I figured I'd take an updated look at the very top of the FPL overall rankings. For those of you who watched the first episode in this series, you'll remember that we took a look at Theodor Steen-Luiz's team, which was ranked number 1 in the world after game week 8. In this video we'll take a look at how his team has performed over the 4 game weeks since that video was released. He has been overtaken, so we'll also take a side-by-side look at the new number 1 ranked overall team and how they performed over the past 4 weeks in comparison, allowing them to move up to the top of the FPL mountain. Now, same as last time, this video is going to be much more casual, none of the fancy graphics and things like that, but I think it's definitely interesting to take a look at, and based on the comments the first video in this series got, a lot of you out there seem to agree with me on that. Now, if you do like the content I'm doing here on both FPL and the Fantasy Champions League game, make sure to give the video a thumbs up and get yourself subscribed. Hit that notification bell as well so you know when the latest video drops. But yeah, let's get straight into it. Okay, so just a quick reminder here, on the left is Theodor Steen-Luiz's team from game week 8 that scored 95 points and saw him move into the number 1 spot in the overall rankings back then. In the last video where we analysed his season so far, part of the conclusion was that he may regret bringing in Ozil and Otamendi because they were not consistently playing, and he may also need to look at bringing in some Liverpool attack as they face Huddersfield, Cardiff and Fulham in 3 of their next 4 fixtures at the time. On the right we have Tony Harponnen's team. He is now the number 1 overall ranked manager after game week 12, but in game week 8 where he scored 84 points, he ended up being ranked around 119th place, so he has had to make up a decent amount of ground there over the last 4 game weeks. As you can see, some different ideas are at play here, with a lot more money being invested in the forwards for Theodor's side, whereas Tony has gone for 2 premium mids. There are quite a few things that they're both obviously trying to cover though, with Aguero, Wilson, Richarlison and Alonso all owned by both managers. They've also both invested in Wolves defence and in a Spurs player, although as we can see they've gone about that in slightly different ways there. Also, just a quick note on Tony's team, that's that the triple captainship has been used in game week 2 on Aguero for the hat-trick that he got against Huddersfield, so he picked up 60 points there. Definitely a successful use of the chip, I think, and the wildcard has also been used in game week 5, which funnily enough is the same week Theodor used his wildcard as well, but of course Theodor still has all of his other chips in play. Anyway, let's move forward to game week 9 and see how they both did, if any transfers were made in either team and who the difference makers were between the 2 managers. Right, so these are the game week 9 team selections. Again, Theodor on the left and Tony on the right, and as you can see it must have been a pretty disappointing week for Theodor here with just 49 points, the lowest score of the season for his side but still above the average of 43, so not the worst possible result I suppose. And believe it or not, even with that score of 49, he still holds on to the number 1 spot here, meaning nobody within touching distance had a particularly big week either. Looking at the side here, he's made the decision to just use the 1 transfer again, bringing in Robertson for Otamendi. Definitely a good move there for a gain of 8 points, as Otamendi didn't play for City and he hasn't played for City in the league since. And he would have got 0 from Bennett as well as his first sub, who conceded 2 against Watford and picked up a yellow card there, so that transfer immediately pays off. The other potential rotation risk we highlighted in Ozil actually returned well here with 12 points. The only players to return outside of the 2 already mentioned though were Trippier, who got a clean sheet against West Ham, and Aguero as captain, who got the 1 goal in City's 5-0 win against Burnley. So heading into game week 10, a bit of a disappointing week I suppose, since nobody likes to score below 50, but the transfer he made did pay off. He holds on to the number 1 overall rank and he's rolling a free transfer again, so yeah, not all bad I suppose. For Tony's side, the game week score was 56, so he only made a gain of 7 points, but surprisingly enough that score was good enough to take him from 119th all the way up to 37th overall. So a lot of teams at the very top must have had an awful week, which does kind of make sense when you think about it, as game week 9 was pretty bad for almost everyone as far as I can remember. Interesting to note that his 1 free transfer was used this week to take out Marcos Alonso and bring in Robertson, so they both look to bring in the same player. Presumably because of the Chelsea game against Man United being a worse matchup on paper than Liverpool's game against Huddersfield, but still definitely a bold call to transfer out Alonso there, the highest scoring defender in the game, and obviously now he's the highest scoring player overall in the game too. But yeah, very similar returns from both sets of players there. The key difference maker, I suppose, is actually Begovic in goal for Tony, with the 9 points that he recorded in Bournemouth's 0-0 draw against Southampton essentially being all that separates the two sides. Obviously, Toney could have done even better had Sterling played for City, and also had he played Pickford against Palace over Begovic, which I think there's definitely an argument for here, since both keepers had good home fixtures, and siding with Pickford would have avoided a double up on Bournemouth defenders, since he's also playing Steve Cook, and then obviously that avoids any risk that comes with the notion that 2 clean sheet wipeouts could happen with just the 1 goal going in there. However, I'm sure Toney was happy with the rise in rank nevertheless, so yeah, let's move on to game week 10 now and see how both teams did there. So here we go, and surprisingly no transfers made here for game week 10 in Theodore's side, and the lack of Liverpool attack combined with a blank from vice-captain Lacazette is far from ideal. On top of that, both Hazard, who was set as captain initially, and Robertson, the transfer that he made last week, didn't play this week and dropped to the bench, meaning the game week score of 50 here falls below the average score for the week of 58. Unfortunately, this also means the top spot has been lost as Theodore drops down to 16th in the world. Again, we see the majority of players blanking, with only 4 returning any points above the standard appearance points. That's the second week in a row where that has happened, and it's in stark contrast to the first 8 weeks of the season, where Theodore had points coming in most weeks across the majority of his players. At this point though, it seems like the decision to stick with the Arsenal attackers and not make any movement or changes to try and capitalise on Liverpool's fixture swing is going to potentially haunt Theodore, and it'll be interesting to see if he makes any kind of changes moving forward now to kind of correct that course. In comparison to that is Toney's side, who also didn't have any Liverpool attackers coming into this week, but the decision was made there to activate the free hit chip, and yet again the timing was fantastic as he ended up scoring 101 points. Now I've worked it out, and his game week 19 without any transfers made to it would have come into game week 10 and scored 50 points. So that's a huge gain of 51 points by playing the free hit chip here, piling on that Liverpool attack and being able to captain Salah, with Martial and Capoue also returning in midfield there. The rest of the side was pretty much made up of the players that he already owned. He decided to bring Alonso back in for this week, so he didn't go too crazy with the changes, I suppose, but definitely did enough to really capitalise on the fixture and jump right up to the #1 rank as a result. So now heading into game week 11, like we say, Theodore has fallen away a little bit, and we'll see if he makes any changes to try and fix things, while Toney must be feeling great. He's flying high now, but he gets his original team back after the free hit, while Liverpool's good fixture run kind of continues for a few weeks now. So let's see how they do and what kind of changes and decisions they're looking at making in game week 11. Game week 11 saw both teams have good weeks, scoring well above the average of 52. Theodore's team racked up 73 points, which saw him move up just 1 place to 15th, indicating that most of the teams in and around him there also had similarly good weeks. He used both of his 2 free transfers for the first time this season. Remember, previously he's always used just 1 free transfer at most, and it's been a kind of characteristic of his season that he's always carried 1 free transfer over to the following week. But here we see both Ozil and Lacazette out for Mane and Vardy to come in. Now all 4 of those players scored just 2 points in game week 11, so there was no net gain or net loss on the transfer, and you could argue that the same move could have been done the previous week to take advantage of the Liverpool game against Cardiff, and that obviously would have seen him get the points from Mane's performance there. But I still think it makes sense considering the easier fixtures Liverpool still have to come, with Fulham in game week 12 in particular on the horizon there, while Arsenal will face Wolves in that week. So a bit of a tougher game. Still, it is interesting to me why he didn't take the opportunity to bring in Marco Arnautovic here instead of Jamie Vardy, since everyone was looking to bring in the Austrian due to West Ham's upcoming long run of good fixtures. Meanwhile, Toney's team scored a huge 91 points as his team reverted back from the free hit he took in game week 10, meaning that he got the point hauls from Richarlison, Sterling and Lucas Moura in midfield, as well as Aguero's contribution there as captain, so obviously he's very happy to have got those guys back into his team. 1 free transfer was used here to bring in Michael Keane for Steve Cook in defence, which actually gained him 1 point on the week, and obviously he might get ahead of the game here, with everyone looking at Everton defenders now as potential Mendy replacements, due to them having 3 relatively nice home fixtures over the next 4 game weeks from game week 13 onwards. So yeah, interesting to see that he's brought in an Everton defender early there. So let's just have a look at game week 12 now and see how they did there. So here we are finally with the game week 12 teams. The average for this week was 48, so again both teams finishing comfortably above that. Theodore's score was 58, but he also took his first -4 hit of the season, so that takes it back to 54, and it saw him drop one place to 16th, again reinforcing that notion that most of the teams surrounding him are performing very similarly from game week to game week. He decided to swap out Kepa for Fabianski in goal, and then he also replaced the injured James Maddison with Felipe Anderson. Now that has freed up more money from the keepers, and it's possible that was done with a future transfer in mind as well, since it would, for example, allow him to bring Lacazette back in for Vardy, or switch out the likes of Callum Wilson to bring in Arnautovic after the game week 13 game against City. So it'll be interesting to see what he does with that kind of money in the bank going forward. But yeah, for Tony, his one free transfer was to remove Michael Keane, who he'd surprisingly taken him out there as he just brought him in game week 11. And he got Trent Alexander-Arnold in there to double up on Liverpool defence. Now it worked out well enough as he gained 4 points on the transfer and ended the week with a score of 65, further extending his lead over Theodore and solidifying his place as the new #1 ranked team in the world. But yeah, it's very surprising that, you know, you bring a player in for one game week, he doesn't quite return for you, so you take him back out. Not really demonstrating the patience that we generally hear is a key to, you know, success in FPL. But maybe he didn't see something regarding Michael Keane, or maybe he just overlooked Trent Alexander-Arnold for some reason and saw that as a mistake he wanted to correct. Whatever the reasoning behind it, it seems to have worked out in the short term at least, and it certainly helped him to solidify his spot at the top there. So what are the main things that we can take away from Tony's rise up the ranks to the #1 spot there over the last 4 weeks? Well, I suppose the main one is identifying good opportunities to use your chips, as he nailed that triple captain choice in game week 2 for Aguero's hat-trick against Huddersfield. He then went on to nail his free hit selection, breaking the 100-point mark there in game week 10 as we saw, to make up for a lack of Liverpool attackers, and combined with these successful chip activations, he's also only had one captaincy blank all season. Now of course there's an element of luck involved in things like that, and you can definitely raise questions around the strategy of using your chips early in the season, especially in single game weeks, potentially leaving yourself a bit stranded later on when it comes to the blank game weeks and the double game weeks that you might want to take advantage of. But I think it does go to show that if you do get it just right, it can certainly pay off with some massive points totals and some, you know, huge advantages over the team that you might otherwise be playing. As we saw, you know, a gain of 51 points there between the free hit team and the team that he would otherwise have had to play. I know who I'd rather be at this stage though. I still think Theodore, sitting at 16th in the world with only his first wildcard played and all the other chips untouched, that is still a very strong position to be in at this point in the season. And yeah, despite, you know, 3 out of 4 mediocre game weeks there where he's just about hitting the average, to only have fallen 15 places and still be within touching distance, I would say, that's pretty good. So there we go guys, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to keep up with what I'm doing here at the FPL Centre. Make sure to hit that notification bell when you do it as well, so you know when the latest video drops. Let me know in the comments if you find this kind of video interesting. I'll be back with the usual fixture breakdown video for game week 13 at the end of the week. Enjoy the rest of the international break guys, that's all from me today, thanks for watching.